Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you. I've got a very interesting solving your problems today because there are changes to my teams, as you may have guessed from the title, and there's just a lot to discuss in general following the press conferences and some new thoughts that I have. So I very much look forward to getting into this one. Before we start, thank you again for all the support that you have shown me. If you do enjoy the video, then do drop a like on it and equally subscribe if you have not already. I'm sure the karma will follow in good suit. Without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into it. One difference in this version of solving your problems compared to those in the past is that this doesn't have a press conference section because I didn't want to give you those variables essentially in isolation, especially when they intertwine with so many different things. Hence, they are very much incorporated those updates into different sections, and you'll certainly see a bit of connection between each section, just given the nature of the game week. So in terms of your viewing experience, that is something to note, and what you want is also something to note. Originally, the plan was to sell Bukayo Saka for Bruyne and Bruyne and captain him. Now, the latter part of that is still the same. I shall still be captaining and bringing in Bruyne and Bruyne, at least. But I shall very likely, and I say very likely because who knows, maybe my mind changes again, but it is very likely that I sell Mohamed Salah and Morgan Rogers for a hit and bring in Bruyne and Bruyne, bring in Cole Palmer and bench Jean-Philippe Mateta. So why? Let's start with Palmer. I really like him. I think just because it's away at Newcastle isn't necessarily telling of the fact that we're not going to score goals. We're not going to score many. I think we could score 2. I think we could score 3. I think he could definitely be involved. I think he looked really good against Liverpool. And hopefully this is his turning point and he's back to his best. I think the penalty being so late on as well is kind of symbolic of that turn of events for him, right? Like at that point, the game should really be wrapped up and it should be in a more stale game state when the ball is in their box, right? But Caicedo goes and presses. He gets the penalty, and then Palmer slots it away really well in the corner when the best goalkeeper in the world dives that way as well, up to at least. So I think it's probably a turning point for him. I'm comfortable with him away at Forest on the last day because especially if they need to win, I think you can expect a more open game, and I trust us to get it done. And then with United in 37, I think he's a good captaincy option. So that's that. In terms of the other aspects to this, such as selling Morgan Rogers, I'm really not that bullish on Villa anymore following that Tielemans injury. He's going to miss Bournemouth. He probably misses Spurs, and I just don't trust them to get the job done. Like they could, but I just don't think they will win away at Bournemouth. Such a tough place to go without their player of the season. I also don't think it will particularly help Rodgers not having Tielemans in the side in any capacity, but particularly like with his passing leaving as well. So that's why I am comfortable selling him. I know people won't like it. Spurs at home, United away. I get that. But for me, my team is strong enough, especially with the transfers I'm looking to make, 37, 38, to get rid of him. And then in terms of Sarr, I just really like the stylistic matchup this week. I thought he looked good against Nottingham Forest compared to Eze and Mateta. I know Eze had a bit of a flurry late in that second half, and he's obviously scored. But overall, like performance level, I thought Sarr was definitely better. And I thought Mateta was quite poor. Now, Adam Water's not going to be a part of this game. So losing your press resistance passer, especially against Spurs, I don't love that. And I don't want to double up of Palace as such, especially when there'll be at least half an eye on the FA Cup final rotation, and mainly rotation, right? Expected minutes like being reduced for some of them. And especially with like Mateta's pressing off the ball not being as good as someone like Ismail Assar's, I could see Nketiah getting some minutes here as well. So for me, I'm going to decide to bench him and then start Sarr, keep him just for the upside over Rodgers this week, or at least my perceived upside. Now going back to Liverpool and why I'm selling Salah and why I'm somewhat and only somewhat comfortable doing so. Well, firstly, I thought Liverpool were going to be really up for it, but then I see McAllister quite literally on the beach. I see Gakpo in Italy with Denzel done free shopping. I see that Trent isn't starting. Now I get what Arne Slot said about how he needs to get minutes into Bradley for next season, but imagine this was like a title deciding game. Trent starts. Trent definitely starts. And it just shows to me that they're not 100% focused or even close to being so, which is justified. They've already won the league, whatever. But I think Arsenal will definitely want to honestly just finish second. They'll have some venom in their veins following what happened on Wednesday night. And I wouldn't be surprised to see wouldn't be surprised to see a sharp performance on Sunday. So I'm going to have to sell one of them, and I'm going to sell Salah because you also have to factor in I would really like Saka. I'd really like Saka in game week 38, and it means I don't have to use a transfer there. Yeah, sure, maybe I want Salah in 38 as well, but like that's not a guarantee, right? So we'll see. I don't think I'd captain him in 38. I don't think I'll captain him 37. So I'm okay. And I'm not captaining him this week. So I'm okay selling him as things stand. So those are the changes to my team. And then finally, well, that's the changes to the midfield and forward department. And then finally, with regards to the defense, I think Munoz concedes, honestly. And with Areola, I'm becoming increasingly confident in United scoring. But I might play one of Raya or Kiwior, probably Kiwior, honestly. I know the upside to Munoz, but I'm not too bothered when I think he concedes. Maybe I even play both and just like exploit the upside that's available to myself personally by not owning Mohamed Salah. So that is something I'm considering. That will just be a late decision. I'll post it if I have time, but that'll be quite a late decision. But in terms of the midfield and forwards lines, I can somewhat safely assume that I do that. Obviously, Erling Haaland will be a factor, and we'll discuss that on the next slide. So given that this is probably the most important section for a lot of you, I thought I would dedicate an entire section to it in this video, and that is the forwards. We will start with the two players in brackets. Now, I obviously discussed my less bullish perspective, my more bearish perspective on Jean-Philippe Mateta in the last slide. But to add to that, I also think that Spurs' second 11 is actually okay, and maybe not the best thing for opposition attacks, because one thing I noticed against West Ham is there was an element of positive pragmatism, similar to what I saw when I watched Spurs versus Brentford quite a while ago at the G-Tech. And I think he incorporates that somewhat when he goes to his second 11. And they've got a lot of like good players for that like, quote-unquote B team. Like Matthias Tell will probably play against Palace. So will Wilson Odobert. So will Kevin Danso. So will Archie Gray. So will Jed Spence. That's already 5 players. Kulusevski's got such a good engine on him. I wouldn't be surprised if he starts as well. So I actually think like even though Spurs rotate, it's not the same as other teams rotating. Like for example, I think the drop off between the first 11 and the second 11 for them in the midfield department, let's say, compared to like Liverpool when they go from Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai to Jones, Elliott, Endo as a trio is much bigger there, right? So I'm not too bearish on Spurs actually for that game, even though they are rotating. And then again, big thing, no Adam Wharton, and then Nketiah's pressing as well compared to Mateta. So for that reason, I'm more comfortable with the sell/Bents. Isak, however, I get it because obviously, as I expressed in the paragraph below with Erling Haaland, he's going to be one of your routes potentially to Haaland. But I just don't fancy selling a player of that quality when everything's on the line, especially with the penalties. The floor's so high, and I'm not really looking to bet against that because I just don't think there's too much upside to capture. Right? There is some, but just not too much. Hence, I would try and keep Isak in more cases than not. And then let's discuss the big man. Now, I did say there that the routes for most involve selling Isak and Salah, but I also considered that, especially if Marmoush gets benched, which I'm not sure will happen, but if it does, then you could see like a lot of Salah and Marmoush to Haaland and X if you are able to afford that type of move. I think that's okay. Like if Marmoush gets benched and you want to go Haaland and take that hit and sell Salah, I think it's cool, right? Like I'm taking a hit to get Salah. There are a couple of things, though, however. One, he's probably going to reduce expected minutes. He won't play like 90, I don't think, first game back. Secondly, it's his first game since injury, so he won't be super sharp. He has 2 tough-ish games after this, and who knows, maybe by 38 it's all wrapped up and they don't risk him. And then you have like 14.8 million cash stuck in one asset who might not even start the final day. And the other big thing for me is that even before the injury, right, and when he was getting good expected minutes, he wasn't firing on all cylinders. Now, I appreciate this is Southampton, and I'm considering going here as well. But I probably wouldn't because I think outside of this like 70-ish minutes, and that is even if he starts, there's just not too much to be happy about, especially considering the sacrifices you may have to take elsewhere. And for some of you, like I'm taking a hit because I really am adamant that Palmer outscores Mateta for a hit. But for a lot of you, I don't think you'll have the same bearish perspective on Salah in comparison to Haaland and whoever you're bringing in as well. And whether it is for then Marmoush or Isak, I think more will be for Isak. So I don't think you have to. I think come like 10:30, if we get a leak, 10:45, we get a leak that he's starting, you'll see a mass rush to go and buy him. I just don't think you absolutely have to, and I probably won't. But I get it. Like, how can I not get it, right? It's Southampton away. And on a free hit, if he's starting, yeah, I would 100% have him. I just think in the context of the last 3 weeks, and even this game week, to an extent, I'm not so sure. And what happens if Marmoush starts with him, right? Then I think you just keep Marmoush. I mean, he was outscoring him at times. They were playing together. So I don't think it's necessary. Cunha, I really like for the rest of the season. You've seen me say that so many times this week. I just like him a lot. Brighton, good matchup. Brentford, good matchup on the last day. Palace after the FA Cup final, good, good, and good. Woods, I really like him for this week. How confident am I in him away at West Ham? If they play a back five, I think it could be a bit tough, especially if Forest have a bad day. And not so confident when Chelsea rock up on the last day as well. But I think the prospects are good enough this week to justify a buy. And it's not like he can't score against Chelsea or West Ham, right? I think more people would say, and the general consensus would say, that those games aren't actually that bad for him. It's just how I personally currently interpret them, which is good. It just makes a lot of sense. I just wouldn't group him with Mbeumo because I don't think he's in the same category, and that can be reflected by their points tally to some extent. But he's just very, very solid, and there's nothing really too negative for me to say there. One thing I would say is that I've called in my difference between Cunha, Wissa, and Wood, and I have a greater appreciation for the two forwards that start with W. I think, especially Wissa, I have a great appreciation for these last three in comparison to what I did previously. Now we can discuss the benching dilemmas and thus Aston Villa in more depth. In most cases, I wouldn't be looking to play any of their assets because I think it's so tough going away to Bournemouth. Everyone has found it tough pretty much to go away to Bournemouth, right? They've just lost their player of the season. It's a huge deal. Away at Bournemouth without your player of the season is rough. Is really, really, really rough. And it's not like, it happened a few weeks ago and they've had some time to adapt. They haven't had a single game in that time period, right? And Bournemouth have a huge amount to play for. I thought they were a little bit fatigued maybe a few weeks ago, but since the schedule shifted and they've been able to have this rest and they've got to win against Arsenal, one, I think morale will be super high. Two, they'll really fancy themselves to close out these last three games. Obviously, they've got City in 37. So if they do drop points there, they'll be hoping for a result elsewhere. But especially in these two home games, I think they'll really fancy themselves to get the job done. And like I said, they're well rested. And I think it's a big deal for a team that plays in such an aggressive manner like they do when it comes to their pressing. So I'm quite comfortable benching Rodgers, Konsa, and Martinez in most cases. Obviously, some cases are really desperate and you don't have that much depth in your squad this week. And I think where that is the case, absolutely fine. But overall, I'm more than happy to be benching them. I'm selling Rodgers, most likely. Moving on to Daniel Munoz. I don't mind benching him, as I discussed in the section of my own team, because I do think that Spurs will score. I think this second 11 is actually pretty good, considering it's a largely rotated 11, right? And I completely appreciate that he's got the high ceiling through the attacking upside. And I don't think anyone, including myself, could critique you starting him, and I may be very well do so. I do think I'm leaning towards Kiwior now, however. And I completely get it. I just personally think that they can succeed. And if you share the same view, then benching him I don't think is as bad as maybe some other people would say. I'll be benching Newcastle as well. I'm bringing Palmer in for a hit, so I obviously think we're going to do well. I think we look good enough. I think they look a little bit fragile defensively, especially if Joel Linton's not to be there. And with Palmer playing like how he did against Liverpool, we've got a chance to score against basically anyone at any point. So I'm quite happy to be benching like Livramento in these spots. If it's Livramento versus Konsa, then obviously it's much tougher. I think that's where personal preference, not too much to lean on elsewhere. And then finally, with the Newcastle attack, I think Isak has to start. I've seen some considerations about benching him. If your squad is super strong, then fair enough. But we're not superb defensively. And I wouldn't give us that much respect to bench the best striker in the league this season. Murphy, I think, is, if you want to bench, fair enough. But similar line of thinking. We're playing well, but we're not this elite defense. Romeo Lavia being back is a big deal, though. And then for me, Ryan Knight gets the nod in quite a few cases, and we're going to discuss him in the next slide when we discuss defenders, De Bruyne and Watkins. But even though Brighton have goals in them, with his attacking upside and just with Wolves' form at the moment and the fact they're at home, I'm very, very, very comfortable playing him in the spots. Defenders, De Bruyne and Ollie Watkins. Ryan Knight and Milos Kerkez for me are the two you'd really be looking to target. I fancy Bournemouth to win this game against Villa at home. Then they've got Leicester at home in 38. And the one thing about a lot of the current squads is that the defensive makeup in Game Week 38 really isn't that attractive, right? Just because of the nature of the fixtures. Like Bournemouth, for example, we don't have a lot of Bournemouth defenders, but they're the ones you'd want. Arsenal, obviously, are really helpful. But outside of that, there's not too much. So for me, if you want a defender, Kerkez would be the one. And if not, Ryan Knight for the continued attacking upside over those three games. And maybe he's able to nick a clean sheet away to Palace after the FA Cup final. Or who knows, maybe even in this game. Could do it against Brentford last day of the season. I always have goals in them. If we were all on a free hit, I messed up where the buttons were, or the logo as well. But if we were all on a free hit, I'm pretty sure nearly all of us would have Kevin De Bruyne, right? However, in the last 3 Premier League games, I haven't been particularly impressed with City's attack nor his performances. I know he got man of the match against Wolves, but I didn't think it was a particularly inspiring performance. And I think the goal really inflated what he actually did. And on another day, Wolves win that game, and City really didn't create too many chances in the first place, which I think is quite telling. Obviously, Southampton away, so it's a completely different prospect. But if you have to make major sacrifices to get him in for this game week, then I don't think it's a necessity. Preferable, absolutely. Would I like to own him for this week? Absolutely. Yes. Not a question. But I just don't think you need to break the team, similar to Haaland, to get him for this one game. Yes, there's upside there, but his ceiling's not what it used to be. And there are other players in your midfield lineup that can certainly haul, just like he can against Southampton. So again, preferable, absolutely, but essential, I don't think so. Not for me personally. There's also the slight risk of expected minutes. I think he's going to start though. So I don't think that's too big of a deal. And then lastly, as I said on the last side with Aston Villa, I'm just not too keen to go there. Bournemouth always tough. And the person you'd probably have to sell for Ollie Watkins, or the spot he would have to take on the side in terms of who he would have to take a midfield spot from, or maybe some of you would be selling Isak for him. I personally wouldn't. At least give yourself one game to see how they adapt. If you want him for a rotated Spurs at home, by all means, go and do it. But at least see what he's like without Tielemans, see what Villa's like without Tielemans, and also it's the hardest fixture that they have left. The upside isn't probably enormous compared to the other forward assets. I think you can therefore just leave it and give your time to assess. And like I said, I don't think this rotated Spurs side anywhere near as bad as people make out to be, following what I saw at West Ham. And the other thing is, that game against Villa, maybe for a little bit of rhythm, a couple of those guys get some minutes, right? So maybe Van de Ven plays a few, Romero plays a few, just to get them in the rhythm for that final. In which case, all of a sudden, it's not as rosy again. And there's a real good feel factor around Spurs, I feel like, at the moment, following their win. Whereas with Villa, if they go sour at Bournemouth, all of a sudden, I think, becomes a lot worse, especially if Forest win against Leicester. And that is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful weekend. Good luck, and thank you once again for all your support. I'll see you in the comments below. I will try to reply to as many as I can. Meantime, have a wonderful weekend and good luck.